Hello and good evening. I may introduce Daniela Brill Estrada. She's from Bogotá and she's an artist and researcher working between natural science and arts and searching for the origins of life. She's going to make us look at to give us a look into a project on the salt mines of Hallein. And please take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to tell you today a little bit about the project that I did at the Schmiede as a resident, and also what took me to that project, the process a little bit of what I was interested in before and how I got there. So at the Schmiede, I made a project. Unfortunately, it was a little bit cut short because I was sick. But the project was about deep time and the perspective of the geological movements around Hallein, in the salt mines specifically, viewed from the perspective of deep time, so I could perceive the salt and the processes as living processes of the earth. It ended up changing a little bit at the end. So the installation was basically what you see here, my research on the walls, and then on a table I put some salt from the Schmiede, and then I projected on the salt a video that I will show you, like 20 seconds of the video later. So for the past, I don't know, 10 years, I've been very interested in the definitions of life from the different scientific disciplines. The one that I'm most interested in is physics right now, biophysics, because I think it's the one that is closer to the arts. But I've been looking also into the way Western science keeps like hitting its own head against the wall by trying to define something as difficult as life. So this is the first definition that you get on Google when you Google it now. But then you have many other definitions of what life is from different disciplines, from different religions, from different Western disciplines, and also like knowledge production systems in non-Western parts of the world. And I actually went and took definitions from artists and poets, but this one was kind of my favorite one so far, and it's from an Instagram account that I really like with these dogs.
Earth is a wet rock that's been sitting out so long. Stuff has started to grow on it.
Yeah, so I really like that because it really sums up everything that I do. It's the jump from geochemistry to biochemistry and how I can look at it as something as simple as a rock where stuff started growing on it. And when I found this meme, I thought like, this is genius. This is better than all the chemistry that I have read. I'm sorry. So these definitions of what is alive and what is not alive, it's part of this system of definitions and categorizations that Western academia and Western science have been putting up for the last centuries that I perceive as very dangerous. So the reason I'm doing this research is also because I think if I blur the lines between what is alive and what is not alive, it will help me to blur other lines, like lines between animal and human, or nature and human, or man and woman, or all of these categories and taxonomies that have allowed humans to oppress other beings for such a long time. So when I went into geology, it was also because I was interested in criticizing a little bit this idea of extractivism being okay, like in the salt mines, although there it's not so aggressive against the earth. But I'm from Colombia, and in Colombia people just extract metals like gold and coltan to make cell phones. And they do it by saying, yeah, but it's not alive. The metal is not alive. I can just take it. But you have to see the metal in the system of the metal. So I always give these people a very easy example. It's like if I would tell you I'm going to mine out the iron in your blood, but just the iron. I'm just going to take all of the iron atoms of your body, but I'm not going to kill you because the iron is a metal and it's not alive. So it's very similar for me, this process of extracting metals and rocks and minerals from the earth in a very aggressive way. But to do that, I realized that I cannot try to define what life is, because I end up in this maze of definitions that are really not telling me anything. Sarah Walker is my favorite physicist in the world, and she just wrote a book. It appeared in August this year, and it's about the physics of life. So she's a biophysicist, and she's looking for life, for alien life outside of Earth. And she says we are not attempting to define life. She has a mathematical and physical theory about when life starts. You and I have already seen how such attempts fail. Instead, our aim is to provide a formalism for unifying life and the inanimate. How can we uncover the physics that gives rise to life and allows the transition from non-life to life to even happen? So we're just asking, we're just asking, like, how is it possible that this happens? We're not attempting to define it because it's impossible to define. And this is an ammonite that I'm collecting now because I'm also interested in fossilization processes, of course, the other way around. How does life turn into rock, into stone? Another important book for this is The Vital Question by Nick Lane. This is an older book, and he also researches the moment where geochemistry gives rise seamlessly to biochemistry. This is so beautiful. So this is the moment a carbon atom decides to either, I say decide, but it's not about consciousness either. Decides to either go into building a living molecule like DNA or a non-living molecule like graphite or diamonds, because it's exactly the same atom of carbon. So I'm really interested in this. We have the same materials, but on the one hand, we are calling it alive, and on the other hand, we're extracting it and using it for our benefit. But we also oppress the life. That's another whole question. So I'm asking myself, how can I research this topic of life aesthetically and sensibly, and not from an extractivist perspective, but really going into other perspectives and chaotically and accepting what is happening and looking at what is happening to understand it and to give it the agency I think it should have. This is the shortest way I can talk about how Western sciences have tried to study life. So the history of taxonomies is also a very big topic in my research, and I was also researching this in Hallein because mines are also extremely taxonomized, and geological movements are taxonomized, and rocks are taxonomized, and this was very interesting for me. And I also really enjoy looking at people who try to understand life by gathering it and putting it into a closed system of archive. And this is my favorite anarchist saying: too much order is a sign of danger. And this is what I think happens in Western science. Western science is trying to be so organized that it is going into dangerous places, and that it is extracting, and that it is creating hierarchies based on these taxonomies that it itself is inventing for life. This is two examples of artists that I saw recently at the Biennale. They are artists from South America. One is from Colombia, Abel Rodriguez, and the other one is from Peru, Sandra. And they are both doing their own taxonomies from another perspective, which is not the Western perspective of trying to understand, to study life and to hierarchize it. But Abel is doing the taxonomies of the forest of the trees in the Amazon, near the Amazon River where he lives, to understand the fruits of the trees and the leaves. And Sandra is taking these very old drawings from the expeditions of the colonization of South America, but she's putting faces of the indigenous leaders and climate leaders, you could say in English, who have been killed in the last 10 years for protecting, for example, the rainforest. So she's using this taxonomization from the Western to talk about these political issues that are still going on in South America. One of my favorite books that I can recommend to anybody is called Why Fish Don't Exist, and it's by Lulu Miller. And she says that Darwin was also kind of misunderstood, and I read him again because she told me in the book to read him, and she's right. And she says what Darwin was trying so hard to get his readers to see, that there is never just one way of ranking nature organisms. To get stuck on a single hierarchy is to miss the bigger picture, the messy truth of nature, the whole machinery of life. The work of good science is to try to peer beyond the convenient lines we draw over nature, to peer beyond intuition where something wilder lives. To know that in every organism at which you gaze, there is complexity you will never comprehend, which is what we were talking about before. But how do I do this? How do I take, me being an artist, how do I take the sciences and shake them a bit? How do I disorganize them? So I've tried to find some different ways to do it. One of them is through using their own tools and adding chaos and complexity to indisciplined knowledge. This is what I call I can tell you how close physics and biochemistry are by adding, for example, deep time to the narrative of it. I call indiscipline everything that is outside or that uses and mixes up the Western disciplines of nature study. Then there's hacking, which is a very important part of my practice, a very conscious opening of a system, revealing its power under new light to modulate or amplify it. And there's sensing nature with your own body, which is the way humans understood nature before the Western created all the technologies to understand nature that we have now. So I often think about, for example, in biology, you have all of these people researching life, and they are living bodies researching life in the lab, but they have told me that they need to mute their own body because the body is the source of errors. So you need to trust the data that you get from the microscopes. You need to trust the data that you get from the from the chains of information. You need to trust the data more than you trust your own body because your body is the source of mistakes. But this is pretty new to knowledge, and this is pretty new to nature. These paintings that I think you all have seen in some way or the other are very old paintings. These ones are in Colombia, also in the Amazon, in the Guaviare region. And they were discovered 4 years ago in Colombia when the war ended politically. So we had war for over 30 years. And during the war, the guerrillas took over these places in the rainforest and nobody could get in. And when this president signed the peace contract with them, they went out of the rainforest and people and researchers were able to go in and see stuff that they never saw before, like these walls. So these walls are kilometers long of drawings from the people who live there. This specific picture was taken in a place where the carbon dating states that this is 7,250 years old. So it's a bit older than the Greeks, and it's a bit older than Western science. And but these paintings, there are places in the rainforest where they are up to 22,000 years old. So for me, this is research. Maybe we learn this in art when we go to art university and when we learn about like the worst called prehistoric art or cave art or whatever, because we learn about pigments and we learn about the way they are put on the stone. But you would never learn about this when you're studying medicine or physics. You would never see this in physics. But this is the way people were understanding nature. So they were gathering the knowledge through their bodies, like they felt the rain, they saw the stars, they tasted the potato and the tomato, and they knew. And to research it, they used the technologies they had, which was pigments, and they put it on the wall so they could understand it. So for me, this is research, this is nature studies. And it is exactly the same process that we do right now, where I have to look into the atom, so I have to build the Large Hadron Collider because my body is not enough to see it. So this is the technology I use now to understand the atom. These people use this technology, which was their own body, time, and pigments. And there's a researcher, complexity researcher, Carlos Maldonado, he's from Bogotá. He was telling me that this is actually what aesthetics means. The word aesthetics comes from aesthesis, which means to perceive with your body. And it's exactly the other, like the antithesis to anesthesia. So you have on the one side aesthesis and to feel and to perceive, and on the other hand anesthesia, which is to not feel and to not perceive. So his theory, one of his many theories was that Western civilization was built on anesthetizing knowledge. And this is exactly what the Greek did. I don't know if you remember, but Plato, he threw the poets out of the Republic. He said, oh, you're a poet, you're an artist, you have to go. You cannot be making choices for politics because you're an artist. So he actually anesthetized politics. The body is not allowed in here anymore, or the feelings. This is again Lulu Miller, the Why Fish Don't Exist, and she says that to let go of that hierarchy would be to release a tornado of life. She's talking about taxonomies. Beetles and hawks and bacteria and sharks swirling high into the air, all around him, above him. She's talking about the scientist who was trying to taxonomize fish. It would have been too disorienting. It would have been chaos. So then I start seeing that there's over 90% of the universe that we have not been able to taxonomize in the ocean, in space, inside of the atom, inside of the nucleus of the atom. Over 95% of stuff, we don't know what it is. So there's a lot of things that we can actually not taxonomize. And I call that the intaxonomizables or indisciplined. And the picture is my brothers who were called indisciplined our whole lives. So I kind of love that because they are the perfect example for somebody who doesn't want to be disciplined and taxonomized. And one way of doing it, and one way of changing perspective and adding chaos to do this, to de-anesthetize again the body, is to shake it up a little bit. So this is a periodic table of the elements, which is my only favorite, preferred taxonomization of nature. And but it states where in the cosmos each chemical element was created. So you have hydrogen was created in Big Bang fusion, or you have carbon, which binds our DNA, was created in dying low mass stars and exploding massive stars. So then I start doing this research and theory about the body, the human body, not being an animal or a woman or whatever, but a trajectory of the information of these atoms. Also basing it on physics and biophysics. This is a collection of minerals I did, and it has all of the chemical elements in mineral form. And in every bottle, you could see where it came from the cosmos, and if it was part of the human body or not. Then I did this project about the trajectories of information, where I made this artistic piece to talk about how my body, I was not talking about anybody else but me, was a trajectory of these information processes. And I did these drawings that were like part of my research diary. This was residency I did at ISTA, the Institute of Science Technology in Klosterneuburg, where I was working with soft matter physicists. And I put them on the wall. You can see them. I put them on the wall like this. And in the center of the drawings, there was a drawing. You cannot see it very well, but it says, "I am an information process." And the story is that in the opening of the exhibition, I was telling my friends why I am an information process. And I actually told them, I'm not, don't consider me an animal or a woman or a human or an artist. Consider me an information process for the benefit of the piece and of the exhibition. And an older, I don't know if you were there, no. An older white man, he took a pen out of his pocket because he was so upset with me saying that he went to my drawing and corrected it, and he drew on top of it, "I am not a trajectory of information." So here we go back to how dangerous this is, to how dangerous these taxonomizations are. As soon as I say I'm something people think I'm not, they get mad. And it has happened in many moments. But this was part of the piece. The other part was that I tried to, I used magnets and a robot to make these little spheres of graphite move like if they were alive and leave a trace, leave a drawing behind. I think in the next one you can see them better. So I built a robot, a drawing robot, and I put a magnet on it, and I hid it behind the wall. And these little spheres, the inner part of them is made of steel, and the outer part of the sphere is graphite. And I moved the magnet in a specific way, following a motion that is studied in physics called the Brownian motion, which is a motion every body in the universe shows. If it's alive or not, it doesn't matter. It's a motion. So I was following one of those trajectories, and the idea was that the carbon in this graphite is exactly the same carbon as in my body, but I am considered to be alive, and this graphite is not considered to be alive, even though we share a lot of properties. And in Hallein, I tried to do the same by looking into the geological history of the formation of the salt mines close to the Schmiede, and by taking some words that people use to taxonomize these geological formations to make like analogies with my own body. So I went to the mines and I made a video and I made a collection of objects. This is part of the video, and it was comparing myself to the mine and comparing myself to the salt and its movements, and comparing myself to a geological formation called the salt dyke. I don't know if you have heard of this word in geology. So it's a formation that happens when the pressure of the tectonic movements squishes material from beneath up, and it breaks a rock. So you have a big rock, and it's broken in the middle by another stone that, because of the movements, became liquid and broke it. So you would see it like in this picture. This is a salt dike. So it's salt that broke another stone because of the pressure that it was under. It became liquid and then broke the other rock. It's really cool. I'm sorry, I'm such a nerd for stones. But I was also playing, of course, with the word dyke, because the word dyke in gender studies is used as like, it's also meant as lesbian, but it's also meant as like this weird type of lesbian. So in this de-taxonomization of the world, I don't even like to break gender into so many taxonomies. So I was playing a lot with the word dyke too. So it was me saying I am a salt dyke because of the formation and because of the geological processes. And I actually had some really interesting discussions with some of the men at the Schmiede that were also like the guy in the other exhibition trying to tell me that it's basically wrong what I'm saying. So I am not allowed to be a trajectory of information or a salt dyke according to men. This is part of the video. It's just like some seconds. The video is 10 minutes long. And this is the video that I was projecting on the salt from the top. So you could also play around with the salt and make it move and read the text that I had written. So you could experience the salt aesthetically with your body and also gain, I'm sorry, can you, yeah. So you could have the two of them. This is how it looked like on the salt. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, and that's the final installation. And that's it.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Daniela.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, do I understand you correctly that you're saying that you're not saying that you are alive or not alive, but whatever categorization is always wrong?
Yeah.
So then it's easy. The easiest solution is just not think in categories.
Well, that's what that would be my goal actually, if we could not think in categories. But I'm not saying that categories are wrong, because categories and taxonomies are there for a reason, and taxonomies in science are important to understand a lot about nature. I'm just not. I just think that it's dangerous to go into taxonomizations because it creates a hierarchy that allows to oppress and that allows to behave differently around the other taxonomies.
So the taxonomy is not the problem, but the impact that it has on the thing that is put into a certain category.
Yeah.
So then categorization or taxonomies are actually a good thing, and just the way how we think about them is bad.
Yeah, I don't want to say they're good or bad. I cannot judge them because there's no. I'm not trying to say they're good or bad. Like, for current science, they are needed. You need to taxonomize to understand the body, to understand the human body. You need to understand, or to understand diseases, you need to understand where bacteria come from, or what type of viruses they are, or any, you know, like these specific categorizations, but I don't want to judge them into good or bad. I'm just saying that it's dangerous to create hierarchies out of them, because there are plain and basic and really true hierarchies in nature.
Yeah, but for example, if I say these are fruits that I can eat, that's quite useful. I mean, that would be a good thing to know.
Yeah. I'm not against that. That's what I'm saying. It's also...
But then you have to be more specific in what really the problem is, I think. Or you don't have to, but it could be that the way we think in categories is just a totally wrong perception of the world, or it could be that categories are not really the problem. Just if we say, okay, if you are not living, then I can do whatever I want with you, which is probably wrong and not the categorization.
Yeah. So the question of the categories, it's bigger than I could talk about in a presentation, because I have been researching taxonomies and how people, like the history of taxonomies, in a very careful way. And there's this beautiful book called Naming Nature, and she researches how humans organize the world to be able to survive. So she says that before the globalization, before the colonies, humans needed to know what fruits to eat so they would not die intoxicated. Humans needed to know what fruits to eat to heal a certain illness. And that, actually, she calls it the Umwelt. The word is in German, the official word is in German. And it's something that apparently every human and every animal is born with in their brains. So she also gives some examples of humans that have accidents and lose that part of the brain and cannot recognize an apple from a cat or something, you know, like extreme things. So they don't have this anymore in their brains, so they cannot recognize the living things anymore, which is basic for surviving. So the first thing you see in a human baby is that they can understand the difference between their dog and a chair. So it's a survival thing. But then once she goes into the history of how humans start wondering about nature, and then they get to the academia is founded, and then first people are actually allowed to say, like, I have a Wunderkammer at home, and I'm interested in birds, and I'm bringing birds from everywhere in the world, and I realized that there's a type of bird that is born with this type of feather, and I write a paper and I send it to the academy, and they accept my knowledge, my human normal knowledge, as part of their academic scientific knowledge. And then she goes deeper into what happens afterwards and what happens when they discover genetics. And that's when fish stop existing. That's why this book is called Why Fish Don't Exist, because the category of fish stops existing. So we as humans, we know that fish exist because we have seen them, and because we grew up with knowing, I say the word fish and you have an image of a fish. But genetics tells you that the lungfish is closer to the cow genetically than to the salmon. So fish as a category, they don't exist. And then it starts getting weirder and weirder the less humans understand about nature. So the taxonomies start being a path of science that less humans understand and know. And she actually says, when we are playing ping pong, we don't call a physicist and say, like, hey, how does the ping pong jump? I don't know how it, you know. But if you go to the forest and you find mushrooms, you don't know which ones to eat. You need the scientific knowledge because we have lost that connection to nature. We have lost the connection to the Umwelt. So she's actually not even criticizing, but telling a very objective story of how humans started taxonomizing nature. And nowadays, if you look at it from a decolonial perspective, that these taxonomies were the ones that allowed slavery, and these taxonomies are the ones that allow machismo in society. And these taxonomies are the ones that say this type of human belongs here and this type of human belongs here, because the taxonomies in humanity allow for these hierarchies to exist. So it's not only about gold being alive or not, it's about the hierarchies inside of the human society allowing some humans to be more than others. And inside of the animal kingdom, so you have humans and you have animals. and there's a clear hierarchy between them. And then you have in the animal world some animals that are more important than others. And you would never kill a dog, but you would kill a pig. So it's what is difficult is that it has separated us from nature. And now I go to the forest and I don't know what berries I can eat. And I don't know what mushrooms I can eat. I don't know if I answered your question, I'm sorry. I went into another thing, but yeah. It's not about judging them, it's about objectively looking at what they have done and trying to make scientists a little bit crazy.
A few days ago, I had a discussion with a friend, and I think it fits here. And we're actually that the map doesn't fit the field, and there are many maps which actually bring you from A to B, and they give you a path, but it doesn't mean that they represent the field. So the map works as long as it gets from A to B, but once it stops working, then you're in real trouble.
Yeah.
Do you think this has relation to what you've been trying to say?
Yeah.
And so basically you're trying to question the maps we're building in order to you describe yourself as a process, as an information process?
Yeah, this was one of the things that I'm not allowed to be.
But if the information process can't flow anymore, then it's stuck.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, and that's how I understood your talk. I mean, it's like how if the taxonomy it gets so abstract that we suddenly lost. But the real complexity is much higher.
Yeah, I mean, it gets abstract, but it was also meant to be that way in that exhibition. I wanted to be so abstract that you could not say that I'm not that, you know? You could not say that I'm not a trajectory of information. But this guy said it. He didn't agree with me. No, you're a woman, you're a human. How dare you say you're not part of the human race, you know, whatever. And it was, although he did aggressively act against my artistic work, he didn't act aggressively against me, against my own body. But the escalation is really quick, you know. So once you go into society and say, I am not a woman, I am a man, or I am not a man, whatever you want to tell people, and they perceive you as something different, it gets really dangerous against the body of the humans, you know. So the critical part is that these taxonomizations and things that we have so inside ourselves, because science has told us that there are two genders, that there is one human kingdom. I hate the word kingdom, but I don't know what else to say. That there's one animal kingdom, that you cannot be outside of it. Once you say you are something, that whatever you want to perceive yourself as, it can be dangerous.
Are there any more questions? Please.
Okay, I move closer. Hi.
Hi.
Has anyone been to the Biennial in Venice? Yeah. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit nerd talk, but you showed these many things I could go into, but maybe I start with this. You showed these images of plants that had taxonomies on them, and kind of like recontextualized them or changed them. I was surprised in this year's Biennial that it aesthetically reproduced something that it was obviously criticizing so strongly. And I think that is a little bit the danger when you criticize systems on a general level, because what you said was a contradiction in itself a little bit, because you said if we look at those taxonomies objectively, and like objectively, that is what a taxonomy is kind of trying to do. You know, objectify some criteria and then sorting something according to those criteria. And I think the problem is that there is objectivity is really as an abstract term, something that is unobtainable, no?
Mm-hmm. Completely.
And yeah, I'm curious how you relate to this reproduction of things, objectivity, as in a taxonomy system. Like, you're reproducing it by saying objectively looking at it, and they are reproducing it by using the taxonomies and also using this classic museum setup in many places, which I found very strange. What do you think about it?
A lot of things. We can talk about that forever, about the Biennale and what it did this year. But the thought of something being objective is also very difficult for me. When I say look at the taxonomies objectively, I'm trying to say I'm really honestly, deeply trying not to judge when they are there for a reason. Or when I research the history and how humans created taxonomies and why they were created, I try to look at it without judging them, without saying like, okay, but why did you divide this? Why did you do this? Why did you, why? Because it would be ridiculous for me to say that genetics and finding the genetic code was not an absurdly cool step for everybody, you know. So even if finding the genetic code led to the disappearance of fish as a category for them, fish still exist for me, you know. I still perceive them. I still see fish. I don't know. I still talk about fish, even if I know that objectively they don't exist. And about the artist doing this, yeah, it's a whole other topic, because there's also the taxonomy. If I'm talking about taxonomies also in disciplines, and what physics says and what chemistry says and what whatever says, then you have also the arts that stays in the arts, you know, the arts that are taxonomizing, that is taxonomizing itself as art. So this is also what happened. But I cannot say that I didn't enjoy it, you know? So, and also, we are the humans looking at the things. So we are not a closed system. We are not objective by nature. Like, we cannot be, because we are changing, like we are an open system chemically and biologically. So I cannot completely say that something is static and solid and this is a fish, or, you know, so because I'm also something that is constantly changing. So, or that's how I would perceive also science and how taxonomies are done.
Yeah, maybe slicing it up a little bit. What you're talking about, like this is a fish. I mean, from a cognitive neuroscience perspective, we're pattern recognition machines to a certain extent. Like, we recognize something that has similarities and then we sort it by that. As like one slice. And the other thing is, I mean, what you're saying, that there's something static and the information process, I think this is closely related to probably something like a personal identity problem. Like this old debate, why am I me? Like,
oh, not at all. I don't want to know why am I me. No, I don't care about that.
No, but I mean, what is the definition of it? Because like you and me, we have more in common than me 25 years ago and me now. But still there's a continuity that is something that is intuitive to us, that I'm still a person or something like that.
I think it depends on the perspective that you're looking at it from. Like, if you're looking at it from a neuroscience perspective, then you can see it in a in a specific way. If you're looking at it from a quantum perspective, from a quantum physics perspective, it loses its sense, you know, like if you're looking at it from a geological perspective, we are a microsecond on this earth. So you have to also see the window through which you're looking at the specific thing. So you and me have right now more in common than you 25 years ago, but maybe not so much as you and me had 4 years ago when we were studying together, you know, like, so it depends on how you're looking at everything. So when I say that, what I liked about the trajectory is that it's an ongoing process, that it's not a static thing. When I say a trajectory of something, a trajectory is from A to B, but it's not A or B, it's the process of going from A to B. And that's what I liked, or what I so like about the word trajectory. And it also depends on the perspective. Like if you're looking at it from above, like a map, oh, you went from Vienna to Salzburg, or you went from Colombia to Austria, or whatever. Or you're looking at it from inside of me and inside of my gut bacteria. What changes, you know? And that's also a bit of quantum theory, I think. I like it.
Yeah, I think Western thinking took the turn away from the process around the Plato times, and that is something that is hard to think outside this box now,
Yeah.
when you're born into it.
Yeah. Fuck Plato.
We're slowly coming to an end. Is there a last question? Is there a last question?
Okay, I'll be very quick. Thank you so much. It's so nice to have you, first of all. And thank you for the fantastic talk. It was very short, and I'm sure there is so much more to talk about, because I really love the way you look at the things. And from a perspective of taxonomies, I had to deal with taxonomies a little bit a few weeks ago. And I think there's so many taxonomies about the same thing. Like, there is no one that is there, and I think what for me is interesting, what makes one taxonomy more acceptable than other.
Mm-hmm.
And I like about what you said about aesthetics. Aesthetics, this is very interesting, because I got reminded by my residency at Bosch some years ago. We were called foreign agents, and our main task was to basically really disrupt the process. And we were working in the same laboratories as the scientists, so this was pretty much how they recognize us as artists, like disrupting the process,
Mm-hmm.
which for me is very funny, because why disrupting?
Yeah.
Why not collaborating? Or
Yeah.
somehow, you know, and I suppose that's what I'm trying to do here at the end of the day with my colleagues. But what I wanted to say at the end of this very long introduction is that I suppose this living, non-living notion by itself being so kind of binary as well, very black and white.
Very.
I think from my modest perspective, that things are a bit more fluid in one side, and perhaps from a more holistic point of view, I suppose a process can somehow be also thought as like the spectrum of change of something throughout, as you said, certain perspective, of course, but it's about studying the change.
Yeah.
Why it does change,
Yeah.
what it does change.
Yeah.
And in that sense, I believe that questioning taxonomies, for example, it's task equally important for scientists, for sure, and for us as artists as well. So questioning this is part of this change. So I think the most important thing is to support this process, I believe. So that's what I wanted to share. I don't know if you agree or not.
Thank you. No,
that's how
yeah.
I kind of feel
I
it.
think it's also good to know from other perspectives, and like from other perspectives, and from what you do in your work, that you're also thinking of these kind of things, you know, because I think we are confronted with them. We are confronted with them when we're invited into a scientific institution and are called the artists. You know, like this is the artist in residence. And then there is an immediate hierarchy between artist and scientist that Plato founded, you know? So there is an immediate hierarchy. So we are confronted with these kind of things. And it's important to think about them from all the perspectives. Yeah.
So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening.